Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. The Kybalion. Have you ever noticed the stillness in a quiet room isn't truly still? There's something underneath, almost imperceptible, like a low hum woven into the silence. Frequency, pulsing. Not sound, not thought, but the origin of both. That's the whisper of the universe. It's always been this way. Long before instruments could measure frequency, before quantum equations and neuroscience, the ancient initiates knew. They didn't need proof. They felt it. In Egypt, in Greece, in India, they whispered of a truth that never stopped vibrating. Everything moves. Everything is in motion. Not metaphorically, literally. This means your thoughts, your emotions, even the body you inhabit. None of it is still. You are a symphony of frequencies, layered and evolving, resonating with the entire field of existence. Every fear, every desire, every heartbeat, a wave on the ocean of consciousness. That's unsettling, isn't it? To realize that stillness doesn't exist, only slower motion. That solidity is just an illusion created by slow vibrations. The table, the chair, your hand, all energy moving too slowly to notice. But it's still moving, and so are you, especially you. So then, what determines the frequency of a thought? Why does one idea feel light and liberating, and another like chains? Because energy follows attention. Where you place your awareness, you tune your vibration. Think of a radio dial. The frequency you choose dictates what you hear. Joy is one station. Grief is another. You don't erase the other signals by tuning away from them. You simply stop vibrating with them. You stop listening. And if everything is vibration, then your life is an echo of your frequency. The people around you, the opportunities that appear or don't, even your perception of time. It's not luck. It's resonance. The universe is a perfect mirror. It doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you are. That's why the ancients said, change your frequency, and you change your life. But they weren't talking about surface changes. Not smiling while you're still afraid. Not repeating affirmations over a rotting belief system. They meant inner alchemy, transmutation, taking the raw, dense material of your pain and heating it, shaping it until it becomes something higher. Not denying your shadow, raising its frequency. That's the true art. Modern physics is catching up. Quantum field theory, observer effect, they're glimpses through the veil. We now know that particles behave differently depending on whether they're observed. The mind, the act of observation, affects the outcome. Thought influences matter. Belief alters probability. But you already knew that. Not with your intellect, with your experience. You felt it. That shift in the room when someone walks in with joy or rage. The way an idea lands in your chest before it makes sense in your head. That's vibration. That's the field speaking. And here's the secret. You don't need to learn this. You need to remember it. Because this isn't new information. It's ancient. Older than language. Older than religion. Your soul knows this. It always has. And when you hear it now, something deep inside leans forward, not with curiosity, but with recognition. Because truth doesn't convince. It resonates. Then comes the next realization. If you're always vibrating, always broadcasting a frequency, what are you transmitting right now? Not your words, not your smile, but the energy beneath, the frequency that fills the space between your thoughts. When you walk into a room, what enters with you? People don't react to your clothes, your titles, your carefully chosen words. They respond to your signal. And most of the time, that signal isn't conscious. It's old. It's patterned. It's inherited. A loop echoing from unprocessed memories, ancestral fear, societal programs. But it can be changed. Because frequency isn't fixed. It's fluid. This is where awareness begins to become power. When you notice what you're emanating, not to judge but to observe, you begin to remember your role. You're not just a receiver. You're a tuner and a transmitter. You can choose. Not once, not as an idea, but moment by moment, breath by breath. Take a breath now, deeper than usual, and notice, how does that one act shift your field? It does. Subtly, yes, but unmistakably. The rhythm of your breath is the rhythm of your nervous system, of your brainwaves, of your perception. And perception, remember, is reality. Not because reality changes, but because how you meet it does. This is not metaphor. It's neurobiology. It's quantum coherence. It's vibrational physics. Your body is a field of energy, measurable in hertz. Your heart has an electromagnetic signature. Your brainwaves are frequencies. Your emotions, your intentions, they're not abstract. They're informational currents, rippling into the field of all things. And the field responds. You've felt this before. That moment when you shifted from anxiety to peace, and suddenly the world seemed kinder. Not because the world changed, because you did. The vibration shifted. The signal changed. The echo realigned. So what if you started each day not by asking, what should I do? But what should I tune to? And what if that one question altered the course of everything? Because here's the most beautiful and terrifying truth. You are not separate from the field. You are the field localized. You are consciousness having a human frequency experience, not the other way around. So when you sit in silence, when you breathe with intention, when you choose a higher thought not out of denial but awareness, you're not just calming your mind. You're altering the waveform of your reality. You are literally becoming a different signal. And the world must respond. This is not philosophy. This is law. Hermetic law. Universal law. Just like gravity doesn't care whether you believe in it, the law of vibration doesn't wait for your permission. It's always operating. The question is whether you're operating with it or against it. You know what it feels like to vibrate against your truth. It's that subtle tension, that dull ache, that fatigue that no sleep fixes. It's your system telling you you're out of tune. And when you're in tune, everything flows. The right words arrive. The right people appear. Not as magic, but as magnetism, as alignment. You don't chase. You attract. You don't force. You allow. You become the resonance that calls life to itself. That's why vibration is everything. Because it's not what you want that creates your reality. It's what you are. And what you are is up to you. But let's not romanticize it. Raising your vibration isn't an aesthetic. It isn't incense and mantras while the core remains heavy, confused, pretending. It's not bypass. It's not performance. It's a surrender to the alchemical fire of presence. A willingness to feel what's been avoided. To hold your fear in your awareness without shrinking. To witness your shame without fusing with it. To breathe through the frequency of loss until it reveals the truth underneath. That everything leaving is making space for alignment. It's not easy, but it's clean. And in that cleanliness, something begins to rise. Not because you pushed, because you cleared the interference. The lower vibrations fall away not because you fought them, but because they no longer find resonance within you. That's what vibration does. It attracts likeness and repels what no longer matches. Your thoughts don't need to be perfect. They need to be coherent, aligned with your breath, your intention, your truth. You don't need to think higher thoughts, you need to become a clearer signal. One that doesn't contradict itself. I want this, but I doubt it. I dream of love, but I fear being seen. I desire freedom, but I cling to the cage. That's the incoherence. That's what splits the signal. And the field doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to what you vibrate, which is why nothing changes when you affirm from fear, when you manifest from lack. The words are high, but the signal is low. So how do you shift it? By getting quiet, not empty, aligned. Feel what's present, not the story, the frequency. Feel it without fixing it, without pushing it away. Just hold it, like an old song you no longer need to dance to. And as you sit there, breathing, allowing, you notice the signal begins to shift. Not because you forced it, because you stopped resisting. Vibration is permission. It's a yes to your essence. Not who you think you should be, but who you are beneath the noise. And the more often you return to that yes, the more your external life begins to mirror it. Conversations deepen, time expands, opportunities align, and it doesn't feel like effort, it feels like remembering, because that's what this is. Not a new practice, but a return to your original frequency. Before the doubt, before the programming, before you forgot that you're not just in the universe is in you, resonating. The question now is simple. What are you willing to become a match for? Not tomorrow, now, in this breath, because this is where frequency lives. And frequency is everything. And perhaps the most overlooked part of vibration is this: it's contagious. You've felt it. The way one person's calm can soften a room. How laughter ripples through a crowd like waves through water. How someone's silent presence can feel like a prayer you didn't know you needed. This isn't metaphor. It's entrainment. In physics, it's the phenomenon where two systems vibrating at different frequencies will begin to synchronize over time. Pendulums, heart cells, fireflies, people. You are not isolated. You are a tuning fork in a field of tuning forks. Your frequency is a transmitter and a receiver, always in conversation with everything around you. So when you raise your vibration, you don't just heal yourself. You invite coherence into the collective. That's why the work is personal, but never private. The breath you anchor, the thought you transmute, the shadow you love, all of it radiates. All of it touches the web. You don't need to preach. Just be. Fully. Clearly. Coherently. That's the transmission. That's the offering. A frequency so rooted in truth that others remember theirs in your presence. But be prepared. Not everyone will resonate. Some will pull away, not because you're wrong, but because they're still tuned to the noise. Don't chase. Don't convince. Stay with the signal. Your resonance will call what's aligned and repel what's not. That's the nature of vibration. That's its purity. It takes courage to remain tuned when the world asks you to distort. When fear is fashionable. When urgency is normalized. But that's the test. Not to escape the world, to hold your frequency inside it. To be still while everything else spins. To choose clarity when confusion is expected. To emit love in a system built on fear. That's power. Not dominance. Not control. Radiance. The most powerful beings don't impose. They emanate. And their influence is felt not in what they say, but in how the room shifts when they enter. The resonance they carry. That's what you're remembering now. Not a belief system. Not a method. A frequency. One that was always yours. Hidden under the static. Waiting. And it's not fragile. It's not rare. It's not reserved for the spiritual elite. It's here. Now. In this breath. In the space between thoughts. All you have to do is tune. And here is where the real work begins, not with action but with listening. Because frequency is not found through thinking harder. It's uncovered through attunement. And attunement requires silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of noise, inner noise. The constant narration, the judgments, the looping what-ifs. That clutter drowns the signal. But when it quiets, even a little, something begins to rise. Subtle. Familiar. A vibration that feels like home. You've touched it before. In the forest. In the space between songs. In a moment of awe that left you breathless. Not because you understood, but because you felt known. That's coherence. That's when your inner field aligns with the greater field. It's not mystical. It's measurable. HeartMath Institute calls it heart-brain coherence. EEGs and EKGs showing synchronization between the rhythms of your breath, your heartbeat, and your brainwaves. In those states, the body heals, the mind quiets, intuition sharpens. You think more clearly not because you force clarity, but because you allowed resonance. And when you begin to live from that place, not occasionally but consistently, the world starts to rearrange. Not suddenly, not like a movie, but unmistakably. The right people appear. Not perfect people, aligned people. The ones who match your new signal. The ones who were waiting for you to become audible to them. Opportunities unfold that don't make logical sense but feel utterly precise. Paths open where there seem to be none. And even your challenges begin to arrive with meaning, like coded invitations instead of random burdens. Because reality at its core is participatory. It's not a static stage. It's a field of infinite potential responding to the frequency you carry. You are not separate from it. You are in it. And it is in you. Always listening. Always mirroring. So what happens when you change the frequency of your attention? When you stop vibrating with fear and begin to broadcast trust? When you choose peace not as a performance, but as your resting tone? Reality must respond. Cannot ignore vibration. Can only reflect it. That's why no effort is ever wasted. Every breath you anchor in presence. Every pattern you interrupt with love. Every time you refuse to match chaos with chaos, you shift the field. You become a node of coherence in a world addicted to noise. And the field notices. The question is no longer, can I change my life? The question becomes, am I willing to match the frequency of the life that's trying to reach me? Because it is, and it always has been. The only thing in the way is interference. And that can be cleared. The moment you begin clearing interference, something remarkable happens. Not dramatic, not cinematic, subtle. Like the way the light changes before dawn. You don't see the shift at first, but you feel it. A new texture in the air. A stillness that's not empty, but full of presence. This is the prelude to alignment. You'll notice it in small ways. The timing of events. The clarity of conversations. A softness where there used to be resistance. It's not magic. It's mechanics. You've tuned your signal and now the field is responding in kind. This is how creation begins, not with effort but with frequency. Before anything becomes form, it is first a vibration. And you, whether you know it or not, are vibrating instructions to the universe at all times. What you expect, you signal. What you fear, you signal. What you embody, you multiply. That's the real secret. Not manifestation as demand, but as correspondence. You don't get what you want. You get what you are in resonance with. So if your life feels repetitive, if the same loops keep appearing, it's not because you're cursed or broken. It's because the vibration hasn't changed. The pattern is the echo of the signal. And when you finally stop asking, why is this happening to me? And instead ask, what am I vibrating that aligns with this? You reclaim the pen. You stop being a character and start becoming the author. The science supports this. The reticular activating system in your brain filters what you perceive based on what you focus on. Your nervous system tunes your awareness to match your beliefs. Your subconscious patterns sculpt your field. This isn't woo. This is wiring. You're not just living in reality, you're generating it. And here's where the dialogue deepens. What if every complaint was a frequency check? What if every trigger was a tuning opportunity? What if every limitation was feedback, not punishment? Because it is. The universe isn't testing you. It's calibrating with you, waiting for coherence, for clarity, for congruence between what you think, what you feel, what you believe, and what you embody. And the moment those align, The moment your inner world vibrates with integrity, the external begins to catch up. Not instantly, but inevitably. This is why you're here. Not to chase what you think is missing, but to vibrate so clearly that what's meant for you can find you. Without force, without confusion, without delay, because the field never loses your signal. It's only waiting for you to stop distorting it. And distortion is rarely loud. It's not always chaos or pain. Sometimes it's subtle, a life that looks fine on the outside but feels muted within. A smile that doesn't reach the breath. A purpose that feels more like performance. That's distortion too. It happens when your frequency is split. When your truth vibrates one way, but your actions another. When the self you show the world is a few hertz off from the self you whisper to in the quiet. The gap is small, but the dissonance accumulates. And the field hears that too. It doesn't judge. It reflects. It mirrors the mixed signals you send, not to punish you, but to invite integration. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be true. So you begin not by fixing, but by aligning. Not by rushing, but by noticing. Where in your life are you vibrating from fear, from habit, from obligation instead of resonance? And then gently with presence you tune. Not by thinking different thoughts, but by becoming a different instrument. A cleaner channel, clearer pulse, a resonance that says, "This is who I am now." And the world listens. That's the quiet revolution. You don't have to fight the old reality. You just stop feeding it your frequency. When enough of your energy pulls back from the old timeline, it collapses. Not in anger, in silence. Because vibration doesn't fight, transcends. You know this. You've left friendships not with drama, but with a deep breath and a lighter step. You've outgrown versions of yourself not with shame, but with stillness. That's the shift. That's vibration doing its sacred work. The more you align, the less you explain. The less you justify. The more you simply exist as signal. And that signal begins to organize your world. You'll find the right people not by searching, but by being findable. Your frequency becomes a beacon, and what's meant for you, attuned to you, recognizes you without words. That's the new way. Not effort. Resonance. Not chasing. Remembering. Not convincing. Radiating. Because the truth doesn't need to persuade. It only needs to vibrate. Clearly, coherently, unwaveringly. Like a bell that was always meant to ring, waiting for the silence to return. And when the silence returns, it's not empty. It's radiant. It's the space where signal sharpens, where the noise recedes, and something ancient begins to move. Not outside you, but within. A stirring, a returning, a recognition that this is who you've always been beneath the forgetting. The forgetting was necessary. It taught you the texture of distortion so you could recognize coherence. It taught you what isn't you so the real signal would stand out unmistakably. The forgetting carved space for remembering. And the remembering, it begins now. Not as a dramatic awakening, but as a subtle shift in how you hold yourself. A new frequency of breath. A quieter urgency. A softer clarity. It's a paradox, really. You change nothing, yet everything begins to move. You don't have to announce your transformation. You don't have to prove your evolution. Your frequency does that for you. Because vibration speaks where language fails. It reaches before logic. It lands in places words cannot touch. You've felt it in others, why not trust it in yourself? So you stop explaining your path to people tuned to another station. You stop shrinking your energy to be digestible. You stop waiting for permission to resonate fully. You breathe. You ground. You open. And you vibrate. And in doing so, you remember this truth. Frequency doesn't ask the future to come. It becomes the future now. Because in the field, there is no later. No someday. Only alignment or distortion. Only now. So what are you now? What are you choosing, not with your mind but with your tone? The people you meet, the thoughts that repeat, the textures of your days, they are not random. They are resonance, echoes of your dominant signal. Not what you say, what you are. And when your being matches your longing, the gap closes. The desire is no longer a request. It is a frequency, and frequencies don't beg. They attract. This is the new creation, not built through effort, broadcast through embodiment. This is vibration as authorship. And you are writing with light. And when you write with light, the ink isn't seen, it's felt. It doesn't stain paper. It stains perception. It shifts how others see, not because you've argued your point, but because you've changed their field by entering it with a cleaner tone. You don't push transformation anymore. You become the condition in which it unfolds. This is why raising your vibration is the most radical thing you can do. It's not passive. It's not personal. It's planetary. Every time you choose peace instead of fear, clarity instead of chaos, alignment instead of approval, you nudge the whole grid a little higher. You become a signal booster for truth, and not the loud, shouting truth of division. The quiet, unmistakable hum of coherence. The kind that rearranges timelines. The kind that finds its way into systems, relationships, choices, and retunes them without force. Not because you planned it, because you are it. This is what all true mystics knew. The ones who walked into empires with nothing but presence. The ones who spoke little, but whose vibration rewrote the atmosphere. It wasn't charisma. It wasn't intellect. It was frequency. And that same capacity lives in you. Not as something to earn, as something to clear the way for. The clearing isn't glamorous. It's subtle, uncomfortable, sacred. It looks like choosing silence over reaction, breath over impulse, rest over proving. It looks like grieving the identities you outgrow, like softening where you used to grip, like trusting before evidence appears. That's the real raising of vibration. Not pretending to be light, becoming light through the fire of presence. And the fire will come, not to destroy, to refine. Because the higher you vibrate, the less density you can carry. Old narratives fall off. Old attachments dissolve. Not because you force them, because they can no longer attach to your new tone. You'll feel this in your bones. The conversations that no longer fit. The dreams that no longer spark. The cravings that no longer soothe. It might feel like loss at first, but it's not. It's return. You're not becoming someone else. You're remembering who you were before the distortion. And that memory, it's not stored in your mind. It's stored in your frequency. And memory in frequency doesn't speak in words. It speaks in resonance. That sudden knowing without explanation. The feeling that something or someone is familiar without history. The sense that you've been here before, not in place but in vibration. These are not fantasies. They're echoes. Vibrational memory surfacing through coherence. Because when your signal clears, the past doesn't just vanish, it reorganizes. You begin to see the story you've lived through a new waveform. Not as tragedy, not as accident, but as calibration. Every heartbreak, every delay, every loop, a lesson in tuning. A map made of sound, leading you back to your original tone. That tone is not quiet. It is powerful. Not loud, but unmistakable. And when it sings clearly through you, the world must listen. Not because you demand attention, but because the field itself bends toward coherence. Like metal to magnet, like light through crystal. And this is where mastery begins. Not in controlling the outside. In knowing your inside so well that the outside organizes around it. You stop looking for signs and become one. You stop chasing alignment and become the space in which alignment happens. And the more you hold that frequency, not in intensity, but in consistency, the more real it becomes. The more inevitable. Reality begins to warp around the tone you've committed to. Not instantly, but without fail. This is how you write new timelines. Not by scripting outcomes, but by broadcasting the version of you that already lives them. The you that has already remembered, already healed, already arrived. That version is not far. It's here. Just vibrating a little higher. Just waiting for you to match. And you do that not through striving, through softening. Through trusting that your essence, untouched by trauma or time, already knows the way. Because you're not building a new life from scratch. You're tuning into the one that's been calling you all along. And when you answer not with words but with frequency, life responds. Not because it's magic, because it's physics. Everything vibrates. Everything responds to resonance. Everything is waiting for your tone to remember itself. And when your tone remembers itself, something ancient begins to move beneath your skin. Not a new energy, a familiar one. A current you felt in dreams as a child. In places that made your bones ache with recognition. In conversations that left you breathless. Not from wonder, but from homecoming. That current is your original vibration. The one you carried before they taught you to survive. Before the world taught you to adapt. It is not lost. It is only layered, under coping, under pleasing, under noise. And now those layers begin to melt. Not with effort, but with presence. You don't need to dig through your history to find your essence. You need to vibrate above it. This is the new alchemy. Not transmutation through force, but through frequency. When you hold a higher tone long enough, the lower vibrations either rise to meet you or fall away. It's not rejection. It's reorganization. You are not losing. You are clarifying. This is why you feel space opening. Why silence feels more nourishing than noise. Why certain words can no longer leave your mouth without dissonance. Why certain places make your body contract while others expand it with a breath. It's not mood. It's frequency compatibility. And when you begin to trust that deeply, everything shifts. You stop compromising with distortion. You stop arguing with what doesn't resonate. You stop chasing signals that aren't meant for your field. And you start listening closely, like a musician tuning to a note just out of reach. Like a mystic decoding a language without words. Because vibration speaks. Always. The universe is not silent. It's singing. The question has never been, is there guidance? The question is, are you tuned to hear it? And hearing doesn't require effort. It requires attunement. And attunement requires integrity. Not moral, but vibrational. That your thoughts, your feelings, your words, and your actions all carry the same tone. That is coherence. That is power. That is the signal the field cannot ignore. Because the universe is not listening to your goals. It's responding to your frequency. And the moment you realize the universe is responding to your frequency, not your words, not your effort, your entire relationship with life begins to shift. You stop pushing. You stop begging. You stop performing. Because you finally understand, nothing truly changes until your vibration changes. And vibration changes not when you force a better mood, but when you release the ones that aren't yours. The inherited fears, the borrowed beliefs, the emotional debris of generations. The noise passed to you in the name of survival. When you let that go, not reject it, not suppress it, but let it be seen and dissolve in the clarity of presence, the signal clears. And that's when you begin to live from the inside out. You stop reacting to the world and start shaping it, subtly, quietly, powerfully, from your frequency. And you no longer need to ask, is this the right decision? You feel it, because truth has a frequency. It resonates. And when you're clear, you feel that resonance instantly. In the breath, in the body, in the field. It's not logic. It's coherence. That's why the most important relationship you'll ever have is not with another person. It's with your own vibration. Do you listen to it? Do you trust it? Do you tune it daily? Because your vibration is your compass. Your map, your transmission, precedes you, speaks for you, and shapes the world around you. The right people, they don't find you through chance, they respond to your frequency. The opportunities, they don't arrive randomly, they match your broadcast. Even the challenges, they're not punishments, they're recalibrations. Feedback loops from the field telling you where you're vibrating from old scripts, outdated beliefs, incoherent states. And when you stop blaming and start listening, not to the noise but to the tone beneath it, you remember, this is all a dance of resonance. Not a test, not a trap, tuning. And every moment is a chance to refine your tone. So when the world feels off, when things feel stuck, when nothing makes sense, don't panic. Tune. Slow down. Breathe. Get still. Listen for the frequency beneath the fear. And adjust. Because alignment isn't a destination. It's a vibration. And it's always one breath away. And in that breath, everything is possible. Not because the breath is magical, but because it's the moment your awareness returns. The place where your frequency becomes deliberate again instead of reactive. That one inhale, conscious, slow, and true, is the doorway. Because it's not just oxygen. It's attention. It's intention. And wherever intention meets presence, vibration shifts. You felt it. A breath that stops the spiral. A breath that breaks the spell. A breath that returns you to yourself. That's the axis. And from there, a new signal radiates. Subtle at first, but unmistakable. Like the scent of rain before the storm. Like the quiet before a leap. This signal, your aligned frequency, doesn't beg for recognition. It doesn't need affirmation. It just is. And in that isness, it begins to attract. But not everything. Only what matches. This is the precision of the field. It's not personal. It's mathematical. It's resonance. Nothing arrives that isn't attuned to your dominant vibration. Not because the universe is cruel, but because it's exact. So if chaos keeps returning, ask what part of you keeps calling it. If rejection repeats, ask what tone in your field still vibrates with unworthiness. Not with blame, with curiosity, with compassion. Because awareness is the first act of recalibration. And from there you have a choice. Always. You can keep tuning to the familiar frequencies of survival, the anxious loops, the defensive reflexes, the conditional joy, or you can begin transmitting something new. Not louder, clearer. Because clarity, not volume, is what the field responds to. Clarity of being. Clarity of intention. Clarity of vibration. That's coherence. And coherence doesn't need to convince. It reshapes reality through presence. Like gravity. Like light. It simply is, and by being, it draws everything into harmony, or sends it on its way. You'll feel this shift in your relationships. In your decisions. In your timing. When you're coherent, you stop trying to fit. You let resonance sort what belongs. And what belongs stays effortlessly. This is where peace begins. Not when life is perfect, but when your signal is. Not flawless. True. And when your signal is true, everything false begins to tremble. Not out of malice, out of misalignment. Illusions can't hold their shape under the pressure of clarity. Masks begin to slip. Old patterns unravel. And what once held power over you now looks transparent, even fragile. This is the dissolving, not a breakdown, a frequency shift. When your vibration elevates, everything built on distortion begins to fall away. Identities, attachments, coping strategies. It might feel like loss, like endings, but it's really a return, a recalibration, a homecoming to the version of you that doesn't need to fight for belonging, because they are already in resonance with life itself. And in this space, decision-making changes too. You no longer debate every fork in the road. You feel the pull. You follow the tone. The body becomes the compass. The The heart becomes the receiver, and the mind quiets. This isn't recklessness. It's vibrational intelligence, a knowing that moves faster than thought, deeper than logic. And the more you trust it, the more you realize the things you were chasing were never the goal. They were the echo of a misaligned frequency, desire projected through distortion. But now the projection clears. Now desire becomes guidance, not grasping. You want less. You receive more, because your frequency speaks before you do. And the field listens without filter. No resume, no credentials, just resonance. And in that space, synchronicity becomes the norm. Not because life is suddenly easier, because it's more attuned. You are no longer resisting your own current. You are riding it. And everything that meets you there, every conversation, every encounter, every opportunity, feels earned not through effort, but through integrity. This is the hidden truth. Effort is what we use when alignment is absent. But when you're aligned, when your vibration matches your vision, life flows. Not without challenge, but without friction. Even your struggles start to carry grace, purpose, meaning, because you're no longer inside them as a victim. You're inside them as a frequency holder, as a navigator, as a remembering. So keep remembering, keep tuning, keep shedding the tones that no longer match your truth. Not in haste, in reverence, because every layer you release is a frequency you once needed. And every tone you now hold is a portal to the life that's already waiting. You are not creating from scratch. You are simply becoming audible to what's always been calling your name. And what's calling your name doesn't shout, it hums. It resonates softly, steadily, from somewhere just beyond the edge of thought. Like a song you once knew by heart, before words taught you to forget. And now, as you come closer to your own signal, you begin to hear it again. Not from the outside, from the deep inner chamber where vibration speaks directly to being. There is no interpreter here, no explanation, just a tuning that feels like truth, a quiet that clarifies, a pulse that returns you to center again and again. And in that return, something new emerges, not a goal, not a mission, a tone. A quality of presence that is unmistakably yours, cannot be faked, cannot be borrowed. It can only be remembered and re-embodied. You don't find purpose like a lost object. You become the frequency that reveals it. You don't choose your path intellectually. You become the resonance that magnetizes it. Because at this level, reality doesn't respond to ideas. It responds to tone. And when your tone is stable, when you hold your note through the noise, life begins to organize around that coherence. You'll see it in timing that defies logic, in strangers who speak to the parts of you you've never voiced, in signs too precise to call coincidence. This isn't magic. It's resonance mechanics. The frequency you hold creates a field. That field filters reality. It draws in what matches and dissolves what doesn't. The more consistently you hold it, the more precise your life becomes. Not rigid, refined. Not controlled, clarified. And yes, this path will ask for everything false to be surrendered. Not by force, by vibration. The old falls away because it simply cannot hold itself in your new frequency. You don't have to fight it. Just rise. Keep rising. Keep sounding. Keep trusting the tuning. There will be moments where the old pulls at you, through memory, through comfort, through the gravity of familiarity. Don't resist. Don't panic. Just listen to the tone underneath. Is it you? Is it now? Or is it echo? Your awareness is your tuning fork. And each choice you make from coherence, each moment you refuse to dim your signal to soothe distortion, reinforces the path of frequency sovereignty. This is freedom, not from life within it, not beyond the body inside it, not away from the world in loving resonance with it. And you are ready, not because you have mastered everything, because you are finally vibrating as yourself. And that self, the one beneath names, roles, fears, has always been vibration first. Identity second. It's not an image. It's a frequency. A feeling in the body before the mind gives it definition. That's the truest you. And the more you trust it, the more you notice something extraordinary. Your presence becomes medicine. Not because you fix others, but because your coherence offers them a mirror. An invitation. A tone they'd forgotten was possible. You don't teach it. You embody it. And that embodiment speaks louder than your voice ever could. It's in how you breathe, in how you move, in the pause between your words, in the way you no longer contract in the face of someone else's chaos. You remain still but not frozen. You hold your signal but not with force. You walk into rooms and the field rearranges not because you intend it, because you are it. And still, there is no superiority in this. No hierarchy. Only resonance. You are not above. You are attuned. And from that attunement, everything that is ready rises with you. Not by your will, by theirs. Because your frequency gave them permission to remember their own. That's how change spreads now. Not through persuasion, through vibration, not by force, through field. This is the silent revolution, one that's been building wave by wave, breath by breath in people all over the world, remembering how to live as vibration, not persona. It's not a movement, it's a tuning. And if you felt alone in this, if you felt strange, too sensitive, too intense, too soft for the world, know this. You were not broken. You were just vibrating ahead of your time. But now time is catching up. More are tuning. More are hearing. More are shedding the false and returning to the tone they were born with. And that changes everything. Because when a critical mass of coherent beings walks the earth, the frequency floor rises. The whole field lifts. And what once felt impossible becomes normal. That is not a fantasy. It is a law. Vibration always expands from clarity. And you, just by remembering, just by vibrating truthfully, are part of that expansion. You are the frequency of the future already felt. Let's continue. And as the frequency of the future pulses through you, what once felt urgent begins to dissolve. The rush, the chase, the old hunger for validation, success, proof, it quiets. Not because you've given up, but because you've tuned in. Deep enough to realize that peace isn't the reward. It's the foundation, the baseline of the real you. From that foundation you begin to create. Not for survival, for resonance. Not to be seen, to be felt. And that shift from projection to presence transforms everything. You stop scripting your life and start sounding it. You don't ask, what should I do? You ask, what am I vibrating? Because you know that question carries more creative power than 1,000 strategies. And as that awareness deepens, so does your trust. Not in outcomes, in the field, in the law of vibration itself. The knowing that what you emit, you receive. That what you embody, you multiply. It becomes a quiet kind of power. Soft-spoken, unshakable. The kind that doesn't argue, doesn't prove, doesn't push. It just is. And in its isness, it calls in the precise reflections your soul came here to meet. The relationships that nourish instead of drain. The work that regenerates instead of depletes. The path that unfolds, not in a straight line, but in perfect spirals of synchronicity and expansion. And yes, you'll still meet resistance. But now you don't take it personally. You meet it as feedback, as information, as a reminder to tune deeper rather than collapse. And so your life becomes a living instrument, a body of vibration, pulse in motion. And your purpose is no longer a fixed thing out there. It's a frequency, alive, shifting, responding, not something to achieve, something to inhabit. That's what changes everything. Because now you're no longer waiting. You're resonating. You're not reaching for some future self. You're remembering that the highest version of you was never in the distance. It was always a tone, waiting for you to hold it, to sound it, to become it, completely, quietly, unstoppably. Now, and when you become it, not in theory but in frequency, the separation between who you are and who you were meant to be disappears. The striving stops. The pretending ends. What's left is vibration in its purest form. Presence without distortion. You feel it in your bones, in the space behind your eyes, in the stillness between heartbeats. It isn't loud, but it's constant. A hum of yes vibrating beneath everything. Not a yes to circumstance, a yes to self. From this place, you begin to understand what it really means to be a creator. Not someone who manifests objects or outcomes, but someone who becomes a field, a living waveform of coherence that bends space and time without needing to. There's no rush here, no lack, no hunger, just alignment, and the magnetic certainty that what's yours cannot be missed, and what isn't cannot stay. This clarity makes letting go easier. You don't need to hold so tightly, not to relationships, not to identities, not to plans that no longer sing. Because now you can feel when something falls out of tune. And you know better than to keep playing a melody that no longer resonates. This is mastery, not control. Sensitivity. You feel the field. You feel your tone in it. And you adjust as needed, not with panic, but with precision. Not with drama, but with breath. You don't react to life. You respond to your own vibration. And that response becomes the architecture of your reality. This is where the final illusion falls, the belief that healing is a destination, that growth has an endpoint, that arrival is something outside of you. It's not. It's here. In this note, this breath, this frequency. You are not waiting for your life to begin. You are vibrating it now. And every pulse, every choice, every moment held in coherence ripples outward, into timelines not yet formed, into connections not yet made, into futures that already exist vibrationally, simply waiting for you to meet them in tone. That's the end of seeking. That's the beginning of sounding. And you, right now, are the sound the universe has been waiting to remember. And so, here you are, not at the end but at the edge. Not a conclusion but a culmination. The frequencies have shifted. The signal has sharpened. And everything that led you here begins to reorganize, not as memory, but as momentum. You are no longer the seeker. You are the sound. Everything you've released, everything you've reclaimed, now lives in your field. And that field, clear, coherent, quietly luminous, begins to speak without words. There is no fanfare, no cosmic applause, just resonance. Real, grounded, undeniable. You walk differently now, not with certainty born of knowledge, but with the softness of embodiment. You don't have all the answers. You don't need to. You've become the instrument that hears truth when it arrives. That's the quiet authority of someone who has remembered vibration. You recognize patterns before they loop. You feel the truth behind the words. You know the difference between what is loud and what is aligned. And you know, finally, deeply, that your life is not happening to you. It is sounding through you. That every challenge is a frequency call. Every encounter, a harmonic. Every dream, a resonance waiting for coherence. And you are now that coherence. So what happens next? You listen. You sound. You choose. Not from fear. From frequency. You let go of timelines that are no longer attuned. You release desires that belonged to your older vibration. You walk into silence without anxiety, because you've learned. Silence is never empty. It is the space where new signals form. And above all, you trust. Not blindly, resonantly, because the universe doesn't respond to effort. It responds to tone. And your tone now is unmistakable. You are the signal you once searched for. You are the vibration that rewrites the field. You are the living frequency of a future that no longer needs to be predicted because you are already becoming it. Not someday. Now. Sound it. Breathe it. Be it. Always. It always begins in the body. Even when you think it's the mind, the belief, the energy, it is the body that stores the signal. The body that listens long after the words are gone. The body that remembers the vibration you've forgotten how to name. Because every experience you've lived didn't pass through you. It stayed. As tension. As heat. As numbness. As ache. And more than that, as frequency. Stored, looped, repeated, waiting. Not to punish, but to be met. To be tuned. To be sounded again, this time through clarity. Your body is not a container. It is an instrument. A resonating chamber of flesh and memory. Each breath, each cell, each trembling stillness is part of the frequency you are. Not symbolic. Literal. You vibrate through your bones. You broadcast through your fascia. You receive through your skin. The mind might tell you stories, but the body tells you the truth. And the truth is this: you've carried frequencies that were never yours. You've held vibrations inherited through blood and silence, fear from your mother's gaze, shame from your father's posture, scarcity from generations who didn't have the privilege of choice. These vibrations settled in the tissue, not as memory, as pattern, and patterns repeat until they're met, not dissected, not explained, met. You meet them not with analysis, but with breath, because breath is the first vibration. It's the original rhythm, before language, before identity, before becoming someone you became breath. And every conscious inhale is a return to the beginning. Every exhale is a release of the borrowed tone. Try this. Right now, feel the breath not in your lungs but in your hips, in your stomach, in the back of your neck. Let it meet the place that always tightens, the place that flinches even when you smile. That's where the old signal lives. You don't need to fix it. You need to hear it. Let the breath resonate through it. Let it shake, warm, release. Let it speak. Not in words, in waves. This is how frequency becomes embodied. Not through concept, through contact. And contact doesn't always feel like light. Sometimes, coherence burns. The moment a long-held distortion begins to dissolve, the nervous system protests. The old signal panics, not because you're wrong, but because you're rising. Because the system is adjusting to a clearer tone. Don't stop here. This is the part most skip. They name the trigger, they distract, they bypass. But if you stay still, soft, breathing, you begin to notice something miraculous. The body starts to retune itself. Not to the old trauma, to the present vibration. The hands relax. The stomach loosens. The throat opens. And the body begins to hum again. Gently, quietly, honestly. That hum is your home frequency. And once you feel it, once you learn to listen through the flesh, you realize you don't need to chase alignment. You are alignment, remembering how to move. Dance becomes medicine. Not choreography, vibration in motion. Stillness becomes sacred. Not emptiness, frequency at rest. Touch becomes translation. Not affection, resonance shared across skin. The body was never your obstacle. It was the forgotten instrument of your awakening. And now, with breath, with sound, with presence, you tune again. You live not just in thought, but in tone. You become coherence in form. And the world begins to respond not just to your words, but to your walk, your gaze, your heartbeat. Not because you tried to be something, because you remembered what you already are. There comes a moment, subtle and unmistakable, when identity begins to dissolve. Not because you lose yourself, but because you no longer need the shape that once contained you. What you once called I becomes porous, softer, less defined by history, more defined by tone. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow, quiet undoing. You notice that you can't cling to the old stories anymore. The version of you who suffered, who proved, who strived, their voice gets quieter. Not silenced, revered, but no longer leading. That frequency has played its part. And now something else is sounding through. You stop introducing yourself by role. You stop measuring yourself by progress. You stop identifying through what you survived. You begin to live as something far more fluid, far more true as frequency. It's not about forgetting the past. It's about no longer organizing yourself around it. You can remember without vibrating it. You can witness it without being tuned by it. That's freedom. Not escape, resonance without residue. And from that freedom, the world looks different. You no longer see people as their masks. You feel them as their tone. Some resonate, some distort, some shimmer and then vanish like echo. You stop taking that personally. You stop chasing it too. You learn to let frequency sort what identity used to manage. And so choices simplify. You don't ask, what should I do? You ask, what feels coherent? You don't wonder if a path is right. You feel the resonance in your bones. You don't hold on to plans that feel heavy, even if they make sense. Because logic is slow. Frequency is instant. And when you live this way, when you become the vibration instead of the idea, everything you need aligns without force. The relationship, the work, the moment of clarity, they all appear in the field that matches your tone. Not summoned, not earned, matched. Because when you stop living from identity, you stop broadcasting contradiction. You become a clear signal. And reality reorganizes around that signal. Not as magic, as law. This is what the mystics always meant. Not transcendence, but transmission. Not perfection, but purity of frequency. Not escape, but expansion. You are not a person. You are a tone wearing a body. You are not your past. You are a vibration tuning itself forward. You are not becoming anything. You are sounding more clearly. So speak, but only when silence has been heard. Move, but only when stillness has spoken. Act, but only when the field responds with ease. You no longer need to convince. You radiate. You no longer need to hold together your life like a fragile construct. You let your frequency build it for you. Moment by moment, tone by tone, breath by breath. And in that frequency there is no name, no goal, no script. There is only presence. And that presence, vibrating honestly, relentlessly, quietly, is enough to reshape the world. Because the future does not arrive on a calendar. It arrives in frequency. And you, vibrating now, without apology, are the future already becoming form. And if something in you stirred, remembered, resonated, it wasn't the words. It was the hum beneath them. The same hum that lives beneath your thoughts, beneath your name, beneath time itself. You are not just hearing this. You are remembering. And if you feel that remembering, even softly, let it speak. Leave a comment. I feel the hum. Let the field know you're awake. And if this vibration moved you, tune in again. Subscribe. Stay close. The signal only gets clearer from here.